Welcome to Seekers and Shifters, where we talk to the world's foremost experts in personal growth and development and ask them everything we really want to know. Hello, and welcome to Seekers and Shifters. I am your host, Michelle, and I am here with my new friends, Rob and Gary. You guys want to introduce yourselves?
Most definitely. And usually I always go first. So I'm going to throw the mic over to Gary.
But you're speaking first, so you get to go first.
The joys of being married to the person that you also co-founded a business with. So we work together, live together, and sleep together. And we co-founded the Journeymen Collective in 2018 after about 20 years of seeking on my part and about 35 years of seeking on Gary's part. And so we've been together as a partnership and a couple since 2007. And we always felt like we were going to do something together. And then 2017, we got married. And then a few months later, Gary's mom, who lived with us, she passed away. And we thought at that point in time, we had all of the tools in our toolbox that were necessary to move through the grief, the depression. And of course, we know that people die. It's part of life. However, she lived with us. And it was the first time we lived with someone who had actually physically transitioned and passed away. And so as that grief and depression was sort of settling in, there's this little fairy human, we say, that came into our lives and said, Rob, Gary, you might want to consider working with this medicine man that I've been working with. And she mentioned psilocybin, magic mushroom journeys. And I kind of scoffed at the idea because I was like, I've done mushrooms before. And it just kept coming up and kept coming back, kept coming up. And so less than 6 months later, I found myself in a journey. Grief, depression, gone. And I think the most important thing is that what I found a deeper level of joy for being human, a deeper level of joy for the practice, the coaching practice that I had already created. It was more in the executive career coaching realm. Even though I had started to sort of deviate over to the spiritual executive coaching realm. And came through that journey, discovered and remembered deeper parts of who I am and who I'm here to be. And that's when I was guided to basically start training with the medicine man to facilitate journeys. And I was like, okay, if this is what I'm to do, show me the way. And so that's when I usually pass the mic over to Gary and he can share.
Well, when Robert came home, actually, he was the guinea pig. I said, you go do mushrooms. I don't do drugs. But we quickly realized that the mushroom is not a drug. It is a healer and it's a medicine. And so I spoke to the medicine man and arranged it around my birthday. It's the best birthday gift one could give oneself, is to go on a psychedelic mushroom journey, and shifted the depression and the grief, helped me with the anxiety that I was going through, and brought me back into alignment on my purpose and who I was supposed to be, who I am supposed to be in the world. I also had a vision in my journey that this was the path that we're supposed to be on. So I spoke to Robert about it. And that's when we pursued it with our medicine man. It actually goes back much further than that. I think when I was 17, I already started my personal development growth by going to theater school. If you know anything about theater, they break you down to build you up to who you're supposed to be, get rid of all your old habits that no longer serve you, and be the vessel for the character that you're going to portray. So in that growth period, that has been carried on throughout my whole life. I extended my theater program when I moved to England and did a 2-year program there where I discovered the Alexander technique, mind, body, and conscious awareness training. The teacher comes up to me and says, Gary, I think you need to be an Alexander teacher. And I'm saying, no, I'm here to be an actor, not a teacher. And we laughed about that. And Fast forward till I was 40. I moved back to Vancouver after living in England for 9 years and continued my discovery of the Alexander technique. And they opened up a school. And the teacher there gave me an application. I became an Alexander technique teacher. And also in that time, I was dealing with metaphysical teachings, healing touch. I could go on even more, and it depends how deep you want to go. So
it's always so interesting to me how the journeys twist and wind. And so I have an 18-year-old son right now. So this is on my mind because the way that he's talking about college and his life. At 18, the perspective is, oh, I've got to do this so that I can do this, so that I can do this, so that my whole life isn't ruined. And it's like, I'm trying to give him that perspective of me and everybody else I know had a really interesting winding path to where we are. And there's no way to plan it all out at 18. I guess some people successfully do that maybe, but it's very rare. And most of us come to what we come to based on different things we studied, different levels of expertise that we're then bringing together into something unique, especially as entrepreneurs. So I love hearing about people's paths and how they wind and how they get there. Rob, I want to go to something you said because it's a theme that comes up over and over and over, which is the universe wouldn't let me say no. Sometimes something comes up and it just keeps coming up and it keeps coming up, and it's almost like it's tapping you on the shoulder and be like, hey. And you're kind of, go away. I'm busy. I'm trying to ignore it. And it's like, no, seriously. And I'll joke around sometimes with some of my clients and say, it's kind of like the universe is saying walk this path or I'm going to push you. It's like, walk, the path. So I don't know. What does that bring up for you guys when we talk about, do you believe that there's a predetermined path?
I do believe that there is a destiny that we create, and it's a co-creation. And you can ignore the taps until you get pushed into it. And so I think Gary's mom's passing was that push. And that's what, it didn't force us, but we just saw the signs, and then we sat back and sort of took a look at okay, well, how do we do this? What does this look like? Mm-hmm. Who's going to help us create it? And so what happened when we actually finally said, okay, let's step onto this path. And when we did step onto the path, it was also like a new aliveness that had come to and through us. And we just kept following that. So the yellow brick road was being presented to us brick by brick. And we kept stepping forward and more bricks would be presented. And it's like, okay, let's keep moving forward. Let's keep moving forward. And we were guided to start working with high achievers, high performers, and executives, entrepreneurs, movers, shakers, actors, athletes, and the founders of companies. And that's what we were guided to start doing. And so we just started. And so for your listeners, it's like, if you're getting the nudge from something, just freaking start. Just take that step. And chances are you're not going to die if you actually do, but there's just so much fear that's been programmed into us if we step outside of the norm. I was educated through 2 university degrees, and I was led to believe that go and get the degrees, and then your life is set for the rest of your life. And the universe was like, no, look over here. And there came a point in time in my life where I wasn't able to find employment, or employment wasn't able to find me. And I was very well qualified. However, it just wasn't happening. And I know now, looking back, that it was the universe redirecting me to say, hey, look over here. And then finally someone came to me and said, Rob, you are a coach. You love to help people. And then all of a sudden there were this reverse domino effect of all these dominoes sort of revealing themselves. They were going from horizontal to vertical. And I saw all of them in different ways in my career, my corporate career. And it was like, oh yeah. So many people used to just step into my office. They would close the door. They would pour their heart out, and they would just talk to me. And then they would leave, and I'd go back to my very technical work. And it's like, what the heck just happened? And so there's all these different strands. Like, we believe there are no mistakes. Like Gary's Alexander technique, healing touch, all the metaphysical training, a bit of my corporate business background comes into play, the biology, earth, science, physics, a little bit of chemistry, and a little bit of math comes into play with respect to how we work with people energetically. Both of us have, I would say, we've mastered and are mastering, because I believe it's an ongoing process of like inner vision, so that we can guide people through psychedelic journeys and do it in a very professional, integrous, intentional way, so that people can really be safe in a very trusting environment, a trusting relationship, and have that high level of excellence in that setting, so that they can release that which no longer serves. And then they can start to see and sense when their bricks to their yellow brick road are being presented to them. Because I think what happens is the universe, the cosmos, the quantum, whatever you want to call it, consciousness is always talking to us. But most of us have so much noise around us that we can't listen.
Absolutely. I think we talk a lot about what we're going to try to get to versus what we already are. And maybe it's more about clearing away, you know. I have a client who is in the Masons, and he was telling me the other day about I'm going to get this wrong. I'm so sorry, Masons, if you're listening. But in the front of every Masonic hall is there's a rough agar, I think, and a smooth agar, and there's a Masonic metaphor there. And I said to him, yeah, but the smooth agar is inside the rough agar. And he was, and he took it to his leader, and his leader put it in the Masonic newsletter and in his speech for that. And I was so happy that concept got in. But it's like, no, you're in, like, the perfection in you is already in you. And what we're doing is we're unearthing all of the conditioning that's been layered on top of it that tells us that it's not there. Gary, you said the mushroom is not a drug, and I really appreciate you saying that. I will tell you, my first time taking mushrooms, I was not on a guided journey with a medicine man. I was in my living room, and I thought I was going to have a good time, and I did not have a good time. I didn't have a bad time, but what happened was more like a channel opened that I couldn't close and I couldn't consciously shut off, and it was a little bit freaky. And what I call them, they, I don't know, were talking directly to me, and they were telling me very important, very serious things. And I couldn't, get it, go away for several hours. And so that was my, and I was like, okay, this is not a drug. This is not like a woo-woo party thing we do to have a good time. This is a substance that connects us. I have since read, and I want to, because you guys are the experts on this, but I have read some things about mushrooms and how mushrooms talk to each other in a network underground, and how something about, taking mushrooms, it might connect us to their network, their kind of neural network, right? Or the wisdom of the earth. Can you say more about that? Because I kind of sound like an idiot just trying to talk to you. You guys are the experts. What are they doing?
I can tell you about an image during my journey that at close to the end of the second day, I lay down on the floor, and the medicine man put on music, and it was this very inspirational music. And the vision was all this electric green light shot out through the top of my head in a mycelium network around the globe. So I saw it like spread all the way through around the globe. So that's how the mushroom work, is through the mycelium network, which can go through the ground and through the galactic world. You probably can develop and say more about that.
Yeah. And so the thing is, for your listeners, it's a mushroom that grows in the forest. It's been put on the planet to decompose that which is no longer necessary. And then that which is no longer necessary, the energy is dispersed out into that ecosystem through the mycelial network, through the divine Wi-Fi put there by nature, And then when the human, who is also part of nature, most of us don't recognize that, but we are part of nature. When the human ingests it, it does the exact same thing. It starts to decompose that which is no longer necessary within the spiritual, mental, emotional, and the physical body at the most basic level, and redistributes that energy so that you can free your physical, emotional, mental, and your spiritual being up so that you can receive new inspiration, new energetics. And it's part of freaking nature that some people even say that it's the flesh of the gods. And it allows you, like exactly what you had, it allows you to have an experience of something other than what we've been trained to believe that reality is. And there's so much more to reality that we just haven't been trained to see.
I loved what you just said. It takes away what's not necessary. And when I was doing it, what it took away from me was all the conscious interference that said, and I came up through the traditional channels too, right? I got an MBA, I was like in business. And then, in my late 30s, it was like, which I read somewhere, 38 is when like the spiritual journey kicks off for a lot of people for some reason. It just became undeniable. So all of these sort of psychic experiences that I had started to have, et cetera, that I was like, nah, that's not real. That's not logic. I'm not crazy. It was just like, no. It's like you said, the universe just keeps coming up, right? And the mushroom is what was like, oh, there's nothing you have left to shut this off. You are hostage to these messages that we are going to give you right now, right? Have you had that experience? Either of you? I'm curious.
I think for me, in 2003, when I had a bit of an awakening happen for my being, I started to see energy around people. And I think it was like maybe a month or two before that started happening, I had sort of denounced my religion. I was raised Roman Catholic, and I basically said, I don't need anything other than science. Everything else can like politely go away. And consciousness, the universe had other things in store for me. And I started to see energy around people. And I went the traditional route, MRIs, CAT scans, blood work, the whole gamut of testing, and everyone, neurologists, specialists, were all like, nope, there's nothing wrong with you. And I met a spiritual teacher, and she said the exact same thing. There's nothing wrong with you. However, she added, you're supposed to be seeing what you're seeing.
So you literally you were like, oh, I'm losing it. And you literally went and got a bunch of medical tests to try to figure out what was wrong. I love this story.
Exactly. And the medical institution wasn't capable of supporting me. And then I finally met someone who said, there's nothing wrong with you. You're supposed to be seeing what you're seeing. And it's part of what you're here for. And I did a sort of dog side head tilt, like, huh? And was like, okay, what the heck does that mean? And that just sort of, it gave me permission to start exploring what else was out there. The quantum realms, the multidimensional realms, the etheric realms. And yeah, like once you open those channels, you can shut them off, but typically the channels are open there as part of your own upgrade. It's like you have a new router for your modem that's been installed, and why would you want to uninstall your own divine Wi-Fi? And it's your God-given right to have a connection to other dimensions more than the eye can see, the more than the five senses can perceive, even though you can still use your senses to actually see more than what is. And it's like we've been trained to use our language to create our reality when there's so much more. Like I often will take a letter-sized piece of paper, 8.5 by 11, put a little dot on it with a pen and look at the dot and say, look, the dot is what we know. Everything else is unknown. Because if you zoom out, there are 8 billion ants known as humans running around this speck of dust known as Earth. Doing what? Why are we really here? So for your listeners, it's like asking yourself, why are you in business? Is there a higher purpose to your business? Is there a higher purpose to you interacting with the people that you do in the business world? And is there a different way whereby you can disseminate a new harmonic energy into the world of business? Because business is one of the biggest engines on the planet. And if we can start to shift how people operate within that, and they start asking those higher level and deeper level questions, that's how change is actually going to happen.
Absolutely. I love it. You and I and Gary, I just met you two at an event last week called Archangel. Our friend Giovanni put it on, and it was amazing. And his talent is bringing all these different amazing people together and then allowing us to interact and talk. And I had some of the coolest conversation. One of the things that I was so struck by in there was folks that were dreaming super, super big. And not all that had the experience, the education, the traditional path. It's just more like putting just like a grappling hook. If you're a mountain climber, you just throw it up in the mountain. You go, okay, I'm going to figure out how to get up there. And these hooks were in things like, how can I impact millions of people with billions of dollars? These big, big things. It's really, it's been inspiring me to invite a bigger dream to come in for me. Just being in there. But these are not people that were waiting for somebody to give them permission to do a big thing.
No permission slip needed. Exactly. Just step forward, just step away. We didn't know what the direction we were going. We had an idea, but it came down to just trust and not to doubt ourselves moving forward, and have confidence in what you have to present at this moment, at this time. And the growth occurs and the path is led. And sure, there's a few hiccups and bumps along the way. I'm not going to deny that. Tears, laughter, more tears, more hair loss. But in the end, we're still growing. We're still expanding. It's still a mission that we're on, we'll call it. We're not here to save humanity. We're here to awaken one human at a time.
We talked about the path unfolding brick by brick. And what I love about that is, and I'm an entrepreneur that trains entrepreneurs. We do a lot of strategic planning, right? But you make a plan, and the value in that is not the plan. It's the process of making a plan, right? It's the process of thinking through that. Because as we all know, anyone that's been an entrepreneur for more than a month knows that nothing goes according to the plan. And sometimes you end up in a wildly different place, but it's that active thinking. And the reality of what happens is it is brick by brick. And when we get into scarcity and when we start freaking out, I'll remind folks, sometimes you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Sometimes a bad thing happens, but sometimes a really good thing happens. And sometimes you get that phone call that says, hey, I've been wanting to work with you for a long time, or, hey, can you come, take this big contract? And that happens just as often as the negative left hook. So sometimes it's just about the message that I get through very clearly when I get stressed out is walk in faith, walk in faith, walk in faith. Right.
Right.
As you walk in faith, the bricks do come underneath your feet. And the message I get, we're going to take care of you. We've always taken care of you. The mushrooms are a little snarky to me, guys. That is filtered through my own snarky mind, but it's like, you've always been taken care of. There's that Bible verse, God takes care of the lilies in the valley. He's going to take care of you. You're always taken care of. Just walk, 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 walk. And it's going to be okay. And like you said, Rob, you're not going to die. And if you do die, you're converted into energy in a different form. Like, okay. Probably something really cool happened. I don't know. What do you think happens when we die?
Yeah, I think, and we've spoken with this actually a lot at the Archangel event with a number of different people, because there's many different people from many different sort of entrepreneurial routes and whatnot. And our view is that, we just leave this physical being. There's a consciousness that inhabits the physical matter of who we are. It's in and around the physical matter. Quantumly, we're 99.99999% space. So that's where the spirit of who we are resides. But that spirit moves on and goes elsewhere to the other side and goes through energetic etheric school while we're no longer in this body, and then drops into another body, and then does that again and again and again, and may not even do that on this planet, maybe on a different planet. Because we believe that there are energetics on other planets around the cosmos. It just, our current technology or level of awareness can't necessarily take a picture of it with our limited perception. So there's a lot that humanity has yet to learn. I believe that we are currently in diapers. We're still sort of crawling around in diapers. And a lot of people will think, oh yes, we're super highly advanced and whatnot. And it's like, with respect to awareness and who we are and what we're doing here on planet Earth, some of us don't even recognize that we have diapers on. So I'm very aware that humanity still has their diapers on, and I'm ready to rip mine off.
A couple of the messages that I did get through really clearly were about this. And one was, they were saying something like, we're trying to tell you as much as we can, but there's only so much you can understand with your human brain. It was kind of like, you're running Windows 95. All right. And the graphics aren't that great. And like, we're going to try to translate it into something your little human brain can understand. Like, okay, got it. There's a lot more that you can't even comprehend. And the other was that not only do we come to Earth to learn something, but that Earth is like kindergarten. And that there are other places with more advanced lessons, and that there's kind of some kind of like school, there's grades or something like that. There's a path. This is what my human mind understands. Okay. There's a path, there's grades, or there's levels. Totally. And that the Earth is on one of the lower levels, that it's like kindergarten before you go to more advanced levels. And I turned to my boyfriend who's sitting with me at the time, and I'm telling him I'm getting this message. And I just looked at him, I said, why did we choose to come back as such hot, smart kindergartners? He was like, well, this is probably the tools that we need to do the job that we're supposed to do on Earth, which of course he came back with a beautiful, profound answer to my snarky, reception of the message. But have you all gotten something like that, or do you understand some type of levels?
Happens in my dream time, that's for sure. I think
in your journeys,
in my journeys too. Yeah, both. Yeah, I do have conversation with source, like probably with you, the downloads and information. Sometimes it's a little bit overload, and I ask them just to slow down the messaging so I'm able to comprehend and digest what's going on. But in my dreams, are we, where do we go? Who's watching over us? Sometimes I think there's other beings in the world that are watching over us, and that they're observing our journey and assisting us along the way with whatever challenges are brought forth to us as a human. So sometimes I think if they're looking down, and we could be slightly a science project for one being, and they got 20 people on their roster, and they're looking at you as like, so he's having a great life. Let's see if we put this program into his life, and how is he going to maneuver through it? So it's a learning and a lesson that all the information's been provided back. So I think, life is lessons learned as we go along. So that vision that I had of the alien spaceship and that we were a science project is something similar to, I think, which is actually happening in the world, that there is an observer, or many, that are guiding us and assisting us. And we still have free will choice. That's what was given to us. And then some of our choices lead us down a different path for us to write ourselves back on the path of birth.
So yeah, I have a very strong sense of that. And I've always felt like we were the Sims, like there's somebody playing, like we're avatars, and they're playing us like a video game. And when we're not doing the right thing, they're mashing the button and going, no, to the left, come on.
No, don't sit down. How many signals must I give you to go in the right direction, or the
like Alice in Wonderland, like, hey, come on, drink me, eat me.
Yeah.
here we go. And they're, maybe they're all gathered around every once in a while. Your guides said, Rob and Gary, we're going to make them, be a romantic couple and go into business together, level extra hard. As somebody who coaches many entrepreneurs, I can say sometimes this is a good idea. Sometimes this is a really bad idea. It's not for everybody, right? It's not for everybody. But you two have been making it work. Can you talk a little bit about, speaking of tears, can you talk a little bit about what that's like?
I think the biggest thing is we work on ourselves first. And we're responsible for our own beings. And I actually don't fully comprehend when people say we need to work on our relationship. We have never, ever worked on a relationship. It's been easy for the most part. I can count on like one hand how many times we've actually had a fight. So less than 5 in 17 years. So what would you...
As Robert says, it's work on thyself first. Because you can't work together if you're not working on you. And we always say there's a trifecta effect. There's Rob plus Gary plus in brackets, Rob and Gary. So there's the 3.
Mm-hmm.
So
is it a ménage à trois with only 2? And it's, I think it's also a function of language of like, because some of our clients will even say, oh, relationships are so hard. It's like, great. Do you like that Hallmark card that you're giving yourself every single day? Would you like to change it? Because you can. All you have to do is start changing the language and finding how easy it is. And then that it's also an opportunity for growth and awareness. And a lot of couples will point at the other person and say, you make me so blah, blah, blah. And it's like, whatever that is, we often say, like, if the finger that points, there's many fingers pointing back at itself. And a lot of the time, with the work that we've done ourselves, we recognize it has nothing to do with the other person. There's some old program, either in this lifetime or ancestral, that has been handed down generation after generation that is reacting in some way of repression or reaction. And then when the individual can start to recognize what those different modes of fear are, that's the gift of your being that's communicating to you to say, hey, there is something else that you can transmute, that you can lighten the load within yourself and be gentle on yourself, because that's actually one of the biggest messages that I got in my very first guided journey was be gentle with yourself. And I was sitting there being with that, and it's like, oh, as I be gentle with me, then I can also be gentle with Gary and the other people in my life, because part of my being, I jokingly said that I was raised in the scientific paradigm. After 2 degrees, you become very critical. And then as a result, it makes things hard and it doesn't make things easy. So the day that I gave that up was like, oh, I became very accepting of things with the condition to understand and with the curiosity to sort of know more. So yeah, it's just, you can allow your relationships to be easy if you can start to recognize the patterns in your own consciousness and subconsciousness.
Absolutely. Letting it be easy. And we talk about, and one of my old clients who actually had on the show a few weeks ago, Pavani Murray, lifetime trauma therapist, does a lot of generational ancestral trauma around sexuality, and very, very interesting work. But they were the first person to ever introduce the concept to me that relationships are safe containers in which to get triggered, and that getting triggered is part of the point of a relationship, whether it's a romantic relationship, a business partnership, y'all are, squared, whatever. But that we trigger each other in safety which allows us, and, in the personal development world, we say, oh, trigger, that's like a fun celebration time now, because now I get to pull on a thread and say what's going on underneath. And it's a big red flag of, I got something to work on if I got triggered, right? There's definitely something underneath that. And my partner in a safe container can do that for me. I can do that for them. And we can bring up these things to work on. And that's how we get better as people and develop a better relationship naturally. And sometimes there are situations that really are unsafe for you, psychologically, physically, whatever. I'm wondering where, if somebody asks you that question, how do I know the difference between, hey, I'm safe, but I'm triggered in a way that's going to allow for my personal growth, versus, hey, this is maybe not a safe situation for me and I should probably leave? Where do you think that line is, or where do you think the indicator is for people?
Great question. Maybe there's a myriad of different threads to that question as well. So I would say that if someone is bringing harm to another, then it's time to bounce. It's time to leave. However, if there's patterns that just keep coming up and one or both individuals aren't willing to recognize them, then it's most likely time to find a different way. However,
we always try in a relationship. I always say, try. Oh, it'll get better. I'll just work on a little bit more. Maybe if I do this and A and B, but that's not solving the underlying issue, whatever it is. And I honestly say it took 2 years to get out of my relationship. I did try to work on me personally, work on the relationship, but it was two paths were going two directions. There was no way of bringing it back in alignment. And then finally, a friend of mine says, when is it going to be over? And then I made a decision and moved forward from there. Hard, definitely, because it's going into the unknown. You know what you're expecting at home, and you're not sure once you step outside the door. But I was bold enough and said, enough is enough. Health, well-being, happiness, we're all being affected. and I'm not on the path of where I'm supposed to be, so I need to leave. And
that was many years ago.
No, that's a long.
You didn't quite weave.
A long time ago. Yeah, totally.
And it's helpful. I mean, we have all kinds of people listening to this, and some are young, and in these types of relationships. And I think, when you are starting down that road, and it's like what you were saying, Gary, like, if I do this, then they will do that. If you're trying to control another person with your behavior, and you don't even realize that's what you're doing, you think you're people pleasing, or that you're trying to be better, or you're trying to even mold yourself or walk on eggshells. You're trying to control. Walking on eggshells is a form of trying to control somebody else, right? If I do X, then they'll do Y, and then I'll get what I want, versus, hey, what's actually happening, and am I cool with it or not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And then inside of all that too, it's like, we've had people sometimes say to us like, oh, I've walked in that person's shoes, or I know what they're going through. And it's like, no, you don't. Stop bullshitting yourself. You can never, ever perceive what someone else is perceiving. I can never, ever put myself into your perception, because there's just, well, if you think about it as a magnetic field, and the magnetic field of your spirit is flowing through these little atoms and molecules known as the human body, the molecules are different. The energy that's flowing through is different. So it just isn't ever going to happen. And so it's just witnessing that we're all here to have a unique experience, and we get to choose what that experience is. And you're co-creating it with something, whether it be the universe, God, the cosmos. And just, if you don't like something, choose something different.
Absolutely. I think that is the realization that knocks people down the personal development path, and all the way down the rabbit hole is, hey, my reality isn't the reality. And there's actually many, 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 many infinite versions of reality. And even my reality can shift. But yeah, my perception isn't like anybody else's. Once you realize that, and then you realize, oh, there's no such thing maybe as capital T truth, or not in the way that we're used to thinking about it. There are so many truths, and there probably is a capital T truth, but we would probably be arrogant to think that we had discovered it at this point, right? And that's what got me, Rob, as a logical person, scientific person, traditionally educated person. I thought it would be really ridiculous and illogical of us to think that we had already discovered all science. Have you guys heard that there was a point in which, and I think it was like the early 1900s, where they tried to close the patent office because they thought everything had already been discovered? It was like right after electricity, and they were like, that's it. That's a pinnacle. And I think about that often, because folks walk around like they're trying to close the patent office. And the second you realize, oh, no, I don't even know what I don't know. I'm just a little human brain. There's so much more out there to discover.
Yeah. All you have to do is start looking into some of the ancient cultures and looking at what was created. There are so many unanswered questions, and even just looking at the geometry of foundations of buildings and how precise they were. And then you look at what's made on top of it, and it looks like a kindergarten kid came along and plopped some rocks together. But then the older foundation is put together more precisely and more accurately with greater skill and mastery, as opposed to the kindergarten of humanity. There's so much more. Like, from my geological days, like, Earth is 4.65 billion years old. And it's, what year is it? 2024? Humanity's been on this big upswing of technology for what?
Yeah, like a little bit.
Like what? Like maybe 70 years? Like, humanity has to give their ego a caddis shake to say, hey, something else is going on here. And there's so much more that we can access when we clear out the noise, get really silent with self, and do the deep inner work. And then you can find, like, I think one of the biggest things that, like, when we work with high achieving business moguls and executives, entrepreneurs, a lot of them are like, they come through a guided journey with us, and they're like, I've never been so peaceful. I've never been so content in my entire life. What is this feeling I'm feeling? And that's when we start asking the questions like, could it be this? Could it be this? And they're like, oh my goodness, I think it's peace. And I've never felt it before. So when you start to recognize that there are humans walking around the earth who have never experienced peace before, that tells you something is bigger at hand here, that we've got a little bit of work to do.
Absolutely. Ugh. And on that note, if people want to go on a journey with you guys, where can they find you? How can they get in touch?
Yep. Great website, www.thejourneymen, collective, one word.com. We're on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook.
The Journeymen Collective. Find the Journeymen, go on a journey, find your peace. Finally, guys, thank you so much for being with me, Rob and Gary. It's been a pleasure. Love having you guys on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you so very much.
Great.